So hello and good morning, and you're very welcome to today's Signpost webinar. We hope you're keeping safe and well wherever you're joining us from today. Today we're joining you from, well, I'm in the East Coast. Beautiful day here in the East, a little bit overcast, but look, we won't refuse a dry day. I'm delighted to welcome Mícheál Kelly, who's our ACRES Specialist in Teagasc. Mícheál is going to be assisting with questions later on. And Fergal Monaghan is our guest speaker today. Fergal, if you could just turn on your camera for us and your microphone, that would be great. Today we're going to be talking about non-productive investments in ACRES. And Fergal, you've been working in this area for some time now. Perhaps you could tell us just a little bit about the work that you're doing, and just for the uninitiated, what exactly are non-productive investments before we launch into a presentation about NPIs?
Good morning, Mark, and all your viewers. Mark, I'm the program director for the 3 of the 8 ACRES cooperation project teams. That's ACRES Breifne, which deals with Leitrim, parts of Sligo, Cavan, Roscommon and Monaghan. ACRES Leinster, which deals with all of the uplands in Leinster, and Munster South Connacht, which is all of the uplands in Munster South Connacht except the Kerry Peninsulas and the Burren. So it's a very large area. It's spread over about 20 counties. We have about close to 8,000 participants in those 3 CP areas. Now, you asked about non-productive investments. Well, non-productive investments are an essential part of the ACRES model. They're investments on the farm, both in infrastructure and in wildlife support and habitat protection elements. And they're there primarily to give farmers the opportunity to create the infrastructure that can deliver better environmental outcomes through improved management. So, and it's also there to provide direct wildlife support through items like actions like wild bird cover or planting small woodlands. So it's an essential part of the scheme, and the second window for applications has opened recently, and that's what we'd like to engage with people on.
Right. Okay. Super. Thanks for that, Fergal. And just maybe while you're getting your slideshow set up there, Fergal, just to apologize for the late start this morning. We did have some technical difficulties before we came on air this morning. So thank you for bearing with us on that. So as you know, at this stage, today's session is being recorded and will be made available on the Teagasc YouTube channel, Teagasc website, and also available as a podcast version. And please do use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear your questions, and it's a great opportunity to interact live with our guest speakers and our experts. So I'm sure Fergal will be happy to answer any questions. And Mícheál, of course, we have our own internal expert here in Teagasc on ACRES. So delighted to go through those questions afterwards. So we'll go straight to the presentation, Fergal, and we'll chat to you afterwards.
Okay. Well, just a little bit of background on NPIs. It's important for everyone to appreciate that the scheme provides a minimum of €17,500 for actions, both non-productive investments and landscape actions. And I say this is a minimum because if the participant doesn't achieve the maximum payment for the habitat or results-based element, they can utilize the shortfall to draw down additional payments through non-productive investments and landscape actions. Now, the non-productive investments are applied for by the participant's advisor. There's a choice of 46 non-productive investments, although I think about 11 of those are only available in the Burren Cooperation Project area. The ones that are restricted to the Burren are primarily actions that are very closely linked to the conservation of that habitat. For example, ones connected with the clearance of hazel scrub. We can split the non-productive investments into 3 broad categories. We have habitat and wildlife support, we have infrastructure, and we have scrub and track. The scrub and track actions are largely limited to the Burren. The applications for non-productive investments are made by farm advisors through the GLAMS mapping system. That's a mapping system that's maintained by the Department of Agriculture. And for the farm advisor, when he or she is making an application, they simply select the action or the non-productive investment they're interested in and draw the location on the map. So it can either be a point location for something like a gate, or it can be a linear application for something like planting a new hedgerow, and a small number of area-based ones for actions like clearing bracken. There is a very real risk that large amounts of funding will not be drawn down if farmers and their advisors do not apply for NPIs. There's a limited number, as I said earlier, this is the second window is just opened and will close on October 31st. The number of future windows will be limited. It's not determined yet, but you know, it's not open-ended. So it's very important that people make use of this opportunity to draw down funds and invest on habitats and water quality on their farm. We mentioned landscape actions earlier, and these are more targeted actions that will be developed by the cooperation project teams starting early next year. It would be a mistake for farmers or advisors to wait for landscape actions to become available because, you know, these will be targeted to specific problems in the landscape, and they will not be developed on every farm. So the NPIs are available everywhere and immediately, so people should apply for them. If you do and you subsequently change your mind and you don't decide not to go ahead with that action, then you can easily withdraw it. So just the message is the window closes on October 31st, so talk to your advisor now. There are some restrictions on the availability, and this is in recognition of the fact that you know, while these actions or non-productive investments have been designed to deliver benefits on the farm, if they were inappropriately cited, there is a risk that they could cause some harm. So there are what we call restricted habitats. These include things like intertidal areas, salt marshes, reed beds, caves, cliffs, and the like, and no non-productive investments will be approved in those habitats. They're important habitats, but they make up a very small percentage of the farmland on ACRES farms. If, as I said, this is the window that's open now is the second window that's been available for farmers to apply for non-productive investments. The first window was last autumn, and during the first window we had just under 44,000 non-productive investments applied for. In the 3 ACRES CP areas that we deal with, that's ACRES Breifne, ACRES Leinster and ACRES Munster South Connacht, we had just under 28,000 applications. And that was at a time that we had 7,638 tranche 1 participants. So the average
is you have moved on to, we're still seeing the first screen that you've shared. Is that what you're speaking to? Yeah, that's.
Sorry, Mark is I'm not sharing the screen. It's yourselves are doing.
Oh,
that.
Sorry. Right. Okay. Gotcha. So, are we on the correct screen? So, Fergal.
No, will you? No, that's yeah. No, you can move on down. You've fallen a bit behind. You know. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Go up one. Up one. Up again. And again. No, you're going the wrong way now. You're there. Yeah, just stop there. Stop. So we've 44,000 applications. Just under 28,000 of them were in our areas. And that gave us an average of 3.66 NPIs applied for every participant in the 3 areas that we deal with. Now, of course, averages hide a multitude and they can be very misleading. So if we look at the number of people in our 3 CP areas that applied for at least one non-productive investment, we can see that it's just under 2,600, or about 33% of the total. So of the people that did apply for a non-productive investment, we have an average of 11 non-productive investments per applicant. Okay, can we go on down to the next one? Okay, now I hope people have a reasonable size screen, but this is just to give you an indication of the number of applications that we received in, by NPI type. So, for example, this one is, I think in, you can see there's a small number of applications at the top that received very high numbers of applicants. That's Gates was the highest, and the Barnell Kestrel box was second. Water troughs was third, and we go on down then through some of the other actions, and you can see that at the very bottom, the number of applications for things like winter stubble was extremely small. Now, that's something that we would like to try and address in the second window. If we look at gates, which were the most popular NPI, I suppose everybody can understand the utility of a gate. It was easy to appreciate and easy to understand, and people applied for them in relatively large numbers. If we look at the Barnell nest box, the payment was quite attractive, and again, that probably drew attention, and again, we got quite large numbers of applications. Some of the other things, perhaps there was less appreciation of the value of them, and consequently, the numbers of applications were lower. So we'd like to address the shape of this graph in the second window, and we would like to see, particularly for the middle section of that graph, to see the number of applications greatly increased. So will we go on to the next one? Next one, please, Michael. Yeah. No, you skipped one. Yeah, okay, so this is... this is the situation in ACRES Leinster. There's a little bit of variation between the 3 CP areas that we deal with. You can see in ACRES Leinster, we had particularly high numbers of Barnell Kestrel nest box applications. Now, one feature of ACRES Leinster is that while we have large commonage areas in places like Wicklow and the Cooley Peninsula, in a lot of those places, there's not very much enclosed land in the CP area. So because of that, some of the non-productive investments were, let's say, of limited availability to some people. Barnell box is one of the ones that can be applied for on non-CP land, including farmyards. And I'd say that's part of the reason for the prominence of the high number of applications for Barnell boxes in Leinster. We go on down to the next one. Yeah, so this is in Munster South Connacht. We can see Barnell boxes are in third place here. And we can see that water troughs and sorry, now you'll have to just forgive me there for a second. Water troughs and gates were the first and second one. But again, the shape of the graph is relatively similar to Leinster. A relatively small number of actions receiving quite high numbers of applications, and at the bottom, another group of actions with very few applications. Now, in some cases, some of these would have a very limited footprint. For example, the winter stubble, we'd have very few tillage farmers in the cooperation project areas, so that by definition would keep the number of applications for that NPI quite low. But I think others, the reason is explained maybe by a lack of appreciation, lack of communication by the CP teams and the department on the utility of some of the actions, and that's something that we want to address in this round. So we go on to the next one there, Michael. Right, so the application process, as I said, is relatively simple. The advisor just draws them on the GLAMS mapping system, but all of the actions that are applied for it then have to go through a screening process. And this is very important if we want to ensure that the right action goes in the right place, that actions that aren't located or certainly aren't authorized in locations where there could be a negative outcome from them. And this screening process is partially automated. And just to give a very brief indication of how it works, it applies 143 separate tests to each proposed action. So to give you an example of one of them, we'll say, is the action within 20 meters of a watercourse? Now this test would be applied to every NPI, from gates to swallow box. But the answer to that, and how we determine is it within 20 meters of a watercourse, is we take the location that's been marked on GLAMS by the advisor, and we draw a 20-meter buffer, or in this case just a circle of 20-meter radius around the location that's been selected. And then we layer a map with a map of watercourses on top of that, and we see, is there an overlap between this buffer surrounding the proposed action and a watercourse? And the answer to that, of course, is either yes or no. If the answer is no, then this test is of no relevance to the screening process, and we move on to the next one. And if it's yes, then we refer to what we call a rules matrix, which provides us with the default response for that action. So in some cases, for example, a swallow box, the fact that it's within 20 meters of a watercourse is of no consequence whatsoever. So even though the result of the test is positive, it doesn't have any impact on the screening, and we move on to the next test. Perhaps for some other actions, like planting wild bird cover, being within 20 meters of a watercourse would be of greater consequence, and it could lead to a fail for that particular test. Now, all proposed actions have to pass every test. So just go back there a second. All proposed actions have to pass every test. In limited circumstances, the operator can override the result for the test. So if there was some doubt about the underlying data that informed the test, or if there was what they call a parallax error where the maps aren't perfectly aligned, the operator can detect that and can manually override the result of the test. But if they do that, they have to give a justification, and a second person in the CP team has to sign off on it. We move on there. Okay, so just to give you an indication of the impact of the screening process, the vast majority of proposed NPIs pass through screening. It's for our three CP areas, it was approximately 80% passed through screening, and about 20% were rejected. Now that varied a little bit between the three CP areas. You can see in ACRES Breifne, it was 15.42% rejected. In Munster South Connacht, it was almost 23% rejected. In Leinster, it was higher again at 26%. Now, the reason that the rejection rate appears so high in Leinster is largely due to the high proportion of barn owl kestrel boxes that were applied for in that area. We move on to the next screen. Okay, and like this chart here shows you it deals with all of the non-productive investments and shows the percentage of each non-productive each action type that passed or failed screening. So you can see that on the left that there's some of them have extremely low failure rates, near zero there for solar pumps. And at the other end, mechanical clearing of bracken has a very high rejection, a relatively high rejection rate. Now, unfortunately, when the operator in the CP team is carrying out screening, they have no ability to vary the application. All they can do is recommend the approval or authorization of the proposed NPI or the rejection of the proposed NPI. So they can't say it'd be okay if we moved it 50 meters, or they're very limited in terms of any conditions that they could put on that approval. Okay, will we move on? What were the most common reasons for rejections? Well, the most common reason for rejection was that it failed screening because of an impact on environmental or heritage assets. So, for example, that could be something that was too close to a watercourse, an NPI that maybe was too close to hen harrier roosts or nesting areas, an NPI that was, for example, if we look at a breeding wader site, NPIs like planting trees or small woodlands would be inappropriate because they would facilitate predators of ground nesting birds. So the majority of the ones that were rejected were rejected for that reason. The second biggest group of ones that failed screening were ones where the application couldn't have complied with the specification. So, for example, we take something like a swallow box. A swallow box has to be affixed to a building. It has to be inside a building, and if there is no building at the point that the swallow box was applied for, then it couldn't pass. It couldn't comply with the specifications and was rejected. Another issue that, we talked about the large number of barn owl boxes that failed screening. We did have, unfortunately, a large number of inappropriately cited barn owl applications, including very large numbers of applications very close to each other, and applications that were too close to busy roads. So we did have a very high failure rate for barn owl boxes, and that did contribute to the higher rejection rate in Leinster, where that action was so popular. But we're working. We run a number of advisor training courses in the last few days, and there's a number more proceeding over the next week. The other CP teams are doing the same, and they'll address these issues, the issues that led to failures, and hopefully we can reduce the percentage of rejected actions in the second window through better quality applications and get that reduction in fails without a reduction in standards. Okay, will we move on to the next slide? Okay, so that follows on there. Just the data that we glean from this has been used for a large number of purposes. It's not just to authorize, recommend the authorization or rejection of an individual application. We're also using that data to identify where we need to work to do better. So, for example, there are certain actions, I mentioned barn owl boxes there, where we have to work on the quality of the training that we provide to advisors and the quality of the supporting materials that they have access to. Okay, we move on, Mark. The diversity of NPIs per participant is another thing that was very interesting to us. On average, each applicant for NPIs only applied for 3.5 different types of actions. Now, we have a very large number of actions available, and we were a little disappointed that there was the average range of NPI types applied for was so low. And again, that's something that we're trying to address through engagement with farmers, public meetings with farmers, digital tools that we've developed, and through our training with advisors. So something we'd like to see in the second window is a greater diversity of NPIs types in applications, and to try and increase that from 3.5 up to 6 or 7. And only 5% of farmers that submitted an NPI application applied for 7 or more different types of actions. And that's a figure that we would like to see increase substantially. Okay, can we move on? Okay, so look, we have to recognize that we have to communicate to farmers and advisors about what's available and what it entails. When we crawled through the data that we gleaned from the last window of applications, and I showed some of it to you there earlier, we can see that there was a relatively small number of NPIs were applied for in disproportionate numbers. And there was another group of NPIs that received very limited applications, very limited numbers of applications. Some of them we fully accept have a very limited footprint where they're applicable, and the numbers will always be low, and that's in a different space. But a large number of them received relatively few applications, and I think a large part of that was because farmers and advisors didn't fully appreciate the utility of them and the value of them. So I suppose that puts the onus on us as a CP team to communicate that information better. Now, that information is contained in the specifications for non-productive investments produced by the department, but that's a substantial document. It's quite a heavy read, and it's not something that I imagine people stay up at night reading. So we've been working to develop a format that's more accessible to the farmer, to the advisor, and to the general public who are interested in this topic. So we've developed a digital resource that we call Action Explorer. This is accessible through our website. It's accessible through farm advisors have been issued with a key ring with an NFC chip in it. And if they tap that against their phone, it'll open the Action Explorer on their device, and they'll be able to use that to help them communicate to the farmer what's involved with the different actions that are potentially available. It's also available through a QR code, and we send links out to the farmers that we deal with as well. We move on there. Okay, look, if you're watching this, what I would suggest is that you get your own mobile phone and unlock it, and just scan the QR code that we have on the screen.
We've also included it in the chat there as well, Fergal, so people can click on that directly on that link also.
Yeah. So I'll just give people a few seconds to open Action Explorer. Okay. Now, the appearance is slightly different on a mobile phone compared to a computer, but if you you can see at the top there's just as an introduction that there's a few high-value NPI types that we'd like to promote, and they're on a carousel, and they move across through there. But I'd like people to just go down, and they can see that some of the recommended actions that we have. So that includes, can everybody see the wild bird cover strip and the conservation of cultural heritage? So what I'm going to ask people to do is, will you just press more details on the wild bird cover strips? Okay, and when you do that, you'll see that there's information there on the amount of labor that's required to do this, the amount and type of equipment that's needed, some seasonal restrictions. What time of year is the work need to be carried out, and you can see there's a short film there. So there's a film. These films are about 90 to 120 seconds long, and you can watch them at your leisure. But if you just want to open the wild bird cover film just for a few seconds. Now, what we're trying to communicate in the films is three basic points, and that is that this action is worthwhile, that it will achieve something, that it has what the payment rate is, and that the amount and type of effort that will have to go into it. Now, in the vast bulk of the NPIs, most farmers will be able to do the work themselves. In some of them, like the wild bird cover ones, if you don't have the appropriate equipment, you might have to get a contractor in to help. But in most, that's made clear in each of the films. Now, if we scroll down below that, you can see that we have a box there which with the objectives. There's a what's involved. The objectives are very clear. That they explain why are we asking people to do this? Well, we're asking people to consider planting a wild bird cover strip because it provides food sources for small birds and insects, provides hunting opportunities for barn owl, hen harrier, and kestrel, and it's good for pollinators during the summer. What's involved? There's a summary of the action or work that's required, and there's a link from there to the Department of Agriculture specifications. If we go to implementation notes, there's some additional information, and there's at the bottom of that you can see there's examples of good locations for this action and poor locations. So you can see poor locations would be things like high scoring grasslands. So if we have a grassland that's getting 7, 8, 9 out of 10, we have a very valuable habitat, very valuable permanent habitat. So we wouldn't want to replace that with a temporary habitat. So a high scoring grassland would represent a poor location for this action. There are other NPIs that would be useful there. And again, we think near houses or schools would be inappropriate because, it does support rodents and it create a nuisance potentially for your neighbours. Near busy roads or railways is inappropriate because we don't want to be drawing small birds in to be victims of roadkill. So that information is all there. There's a frequently asked questions section. And then at the very bottom, we have some complementary actions. So wild bird cover is good for barn owls. So if you're interested in this action, well, why don't you consider other things that would be good for barn owls? So like the rodenticide-free rodent control, planting new hedgerows, winter stubble, barn owl kestrel nest boxes. These all complement the wild bird cover action and add value to it, and we would like people to consider these along with the wild bird cover strip. So that's the basic part of it. We also have a filter. So if people go to just go back to the beginning there where you have and if you scroll down, you'll see the Action Explorer. It'll be if you're looking at this on a computer, it'll be on the left, and you have an opportunity there to select your scorecard. So in ACRES, we have cooperation. We have 10 different scorecards. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the Corncrake or Burren Winteridge scorecards on the system yet. We don't deal with any Corncrake areas, and we're very limited involvement with the Burren area. But you can see the other scorecards there, and if you select one of them, for example, we'll select breeding waders and press Get Recommendations, and you'll get a list of NPIs that we would like you to consider if you have a breeding waders field on your farm. So it's not just for the breeding waders field, the bulk of them probably would be, but they're worth considering on adjacent fields as well. Now that's for most of them, that's very simple. Chuff, coastal, low input pasture, people can explore them themselves. If you go to grassland, it's a little more complex. So I just ask everyone to to select grassland on Action Explorer. And the situation with grassland is that because there's a very large number of NPIs that are potentially of value on grassland, that to try and tailor the advice to the individual contexts really requires the use of a filter. I'm sure everyone's familiar with airline and hotel booking sites. If we think of a hotel booking site, the site itself has links to thousands of hotels. So obviously presenting a choice of thousands of hotels to the potential guest it achieves very little. So the filter is there to narrow the field, to narrow the range that's presented to the traveller, to the hotels that actually meet their requirements. Now, this is a relatively simple filter. So you put in where you want to go and when you want to go there, and you want to stay in a 3-star or 4-star hotel, and the system uses that information to cut the numbers of hotels down to something that's more accessible. Now, the difficulty we have with doing this, repeating this in Action Explorer, is that if we select something like the risk to water quality is high, we get a certain number of NPIs that are appropriate for dealing with that. And then if we go on and say that the field boundary quality is low, we get an additional set of NPIs. So the danger is that the list doesn't get smaller, it gets bigger as you add more information. So the design of this filter is a lot more complex than what would be involved in an airline or hotel booking site.
Fergal, we have about a minute left for the presentation.
Yeah, you were very nearly there. So just ask people to go go down the filter. You've selected grassland, and just select the cover of positive indicators as low. All right, and then we'll say that the field boundary quality is poor. Then we'll go to the risk to water quality is low. Non-native species is none. Sward structure is moderately overgrazed. And bracken we'll say is low as well. So if everyone has that done, I'd just ask you to press Get Recommendations, and you'll get a list of a maximum of 9 NPIs that are appropriate on the field that you've described. So in this case, we said that it possibly includes conservation of cultural heritage sites, planting of small woodlands. We said that the field boundary quality was poor, so we're recommending planting new hedges, tree planting, traditional orchards, again because the boundaries are poor, traditional stone walls, culverts if applicable, and hedgerow rejuvenation. So these are all things that it doesn't guarantee that they'll pass screening, but these are all things that will draw down significant payment and help the farmer improve the score in that field. Right, we'll move on. As I said, I described earlier how it's accessed through our website or using the NFC chip in the key ring or through the QR code. If we move on to the next one, sorry. Right, that's it. Just one other thing I'd say is if you photograph that QR code, if you're using an Android phone, all you have to do is bring the photo back and press lens, and it will bring you straight to the website. So I would ask people to explore the filter and to look at the different actions that are available and use that to access the information they need.
Okay, thanks very much, Fergal. And look, it's probably difficult for people who weren't able to see it live on screen. So maybe we can share some. I'm sure you have some videos or that we could share with people.
Yeah.
a better sense of what it's about. But to be fair, it's a very well laid out website, and it's very intuitive. So I think that people should be able to navigate themselves throughout the website. But that's an excellent initiative, that filtering facility there. It strikes me, you know, that you talked about 143 tests that have to be done on each of the measures. I mean, does that slow the process down a lot?
No, but the screening is an essential part of it. But and obviously, to try and do this manually would be impossible. Would be, you know, it's unimaginable. So the system is a partially automated system. So in most cases, the information comes in both from the scorecards and the spatial information related to buffers surrounding the actions, goes into the computer, the rules are applied, the computer makes a default recommendation based on those rules. It doesn't replace the human. There's a human involved in every decision. So the human then looks at the decision and has to determine, is there any grounds to override that decision? And if there is, they go down that road. And if there's not, they approve the decision. So in most cases, if we take something like a gate, there won't be too much agonizing over a gate, and the decision to authorize or reject a gate will be made in seconds. Yeah. So, you know, even though we had quite large numbers of actions last year, and we'd expect to have much larger numbers in this window, we don't envisage screening as being a significant delay. Okay.
Now, I'm conscious we have lots of questions coming through. We have a relatively short period of time now to go through those questions. So Fergal and Mícheál, if you could fasten your seatbelts there, and we could actually maybe try and get through as many as possible. I know that there's quite a few. So Mícheál will just direct the questions to you there, Fergal.
Fergal, there's a question there. Is the payment per NPI unit once off per unit in a given year, or does the payment repeat for each of the remaining years of the contract? The example there is if you put in 100 meters of riparian margin in year 2 at 550 per meter, do you get 550 in year 2, or do I get 550 for each of the years remaining?
No, each NPI is the payment is for 1 year. So you apply for the NPI, and you get, if you deliver it, you get the entire payment for that in one go. Now, if you compare it with ACRES General, if we looked at something like planting a new hedge in ACRES General, the payment is split, is costed, and the payment is split over the length of the contract. But in ACRES Cooperation, you get it all in the year you deliver it. There's nothing to stop you applying for another hedge or another length of riparian margin the following year.
And I suppose, on your going through your presentation there, it was excellent. We saw a lot of emphasis on the NPI applications on infrastructure. What we'll say the likes of field margins or winter bird food, or what kind of measures with a higher environmental benefit would you be recommending for your different regions? We'll say the Breifne, Munster, South Connacht and Leinster. What would you like to see more of?
Well, it depends on the particular habitat type, but I think there's huge opportunities to draw down a very generous payment for actions like wild bird cover, planting small woodlands, the traditional orchards. I think the payment is around €1,300 for planting 10 apple trees. A very generous payment there. Even the Swift box is quite a good payment. I'd like people to broaden their minds. As I said, we were a little disappointed at the narrow range of NPIs that were applied for. Average person who applied only applied for 3.5. And again, if you look at them cumulatively, we can see that 7 or 8 NPIs accounted for a very, very large percentage of the applications made last year. So I'd like people to use Action Explorer and see the different actions that are available, what's involved in them, the rates of payment, and make an informed decision that suits their farm.
And just to clarify, a few questions come in there. There's 39 NPI actions that are relevant to all the CP zones. What you're presenting today, even though you deal with Munster, South Connacht, Leinster and Breifne, these also apply to the other regions?
Oh, those NPIs are available in all 8 of the CP regions. There are an additional set that are only available in the Burren, but the ones that we mentioned there are available everywhere.
Perfect. And just on, I suppose, the NPI application window, a few people in partnerships had issues last year. Do you see that has been resolved this year? They had issues with applications last year?
Yeah, like this has been a long running problem but for farm partnerships. Look, I would ask any individual who's involved in a farm partnership to contact their advisor about making an application as soon as possible. And if the advisor has any difficulties in submitting that application, to contact the local CP team and the department as soon as possible, and we'll find a way around of dealing with it.
Few questions coming through, Fergal, around delays in approval. Where is this? Where is the blockage happening there? What's causing that delay?
Right. Well, the approval of NPIs that have been applied for is a matter for the Department of Agriculture, and we have I suppose a legal issue here as well, that a lot of the CP areas are Natura sites. They're SAC or Special Protection Area sites, and in those areas, some of the types of work that's included in the NPIs would normally require the consent of the National Parks and Wildlife Service. But the consent of the Minister for Agriculture can through a farm plan, can substitute for that. So while we have made a recommendation, we and the other CP teams have made a recommendation for each application, for each action that was applied for, the Department of Agriculture have to run their own validations against that. They have to check, is the person still in acres, is the land still on their BIS, and then the department ultimately have to issue an authorization. So the screening is finished at CP team level, and it's with the department at the moment.
Just does the change there this year, Fergal, with the NPIs in terms of invasive alien species, if they're recorded in a parcel, could you just discuss, we'll say, the new restrictions on applying for actions where there's invasives presence?
There is a risk with some invasive plant species, particularly plants like Japanese knotweed, that if they're disturbed, it can contribute to the spread of them. So some high risk actions, that involve a lot of ground disturbance or involve a lot of machinery, for example, wild bird cover strips, may well be rejected on sites where there's invasive plant species present, because of the risk of spreading them within the site and then spreading them on machinery to other sites. But we anticipate that there'll be landscape actions in the future to help farmers deal with that situation.
And just in terms of, we'll say, people will be putting in their NPI plans now, I suppose one of the questions that came up there, where a plan was submitted in 2023 for year 1, they're going to submit a second plan now. Will both of those, is there a chance of both of those being approved?
Right. Well, there's a person, not only is a person entitled to apply in every window, a person would be encouraged to apply in every window. So if someone applied for a number of non-productive investments in the last window, we would certainly hope that, notwithstanding the fact that they haven't got formal authorization for the first window yet, that they would take this opportunity to apply for additional NPIs. There's no reason for them to reapply for the ones that they've already applied for, if you know what I mean. But they should certainly consider what other options are available on their farm.
There's just a question coming there. Can small woodlands be removed after the contract period, or are they permanent?
Right, but that'd be it'd be ultimately that'd be a matter for the Department of Agriculture. Yeah. The small woodlands are below the threshold to be considered as forestry, so there wouldn't be an obligation to replant them. What happens after the expiry of the contract is something you really should ask the department to clarify. I'm not going to stick my neck out on
Yeah,
that one.
no, you're not asking it at all. Just another question came in there. I suppose in previous schemes, actions had to be approved by receipts or geotagged photos. Do you see it being the same procedure with the annual works plans? Or I suppose I'll rephrase it that,
Yeah.
or if you could outline the importance of the accuracy of the plan going in terms of the data.
Well, I think that is very important, because the screening process that all of these applications have to go through is very site specific. So it's very important that when you apply for a particular action at a particular location, that you, the farmer, is happy with that location, because your ability to move it if you change your mind is extremely limited. As I said, the screening is something. If you apply for a water trough at a particular location, it's screened against all of those 143 tests. If it passes all of them, as the majority will, it gets authorized. It does not follow that if you change your mind and move the water trough 100 meters or 200 meters, that it would definitely pass screening. So the risk is that if you move it, that it wouldn't be paid on. Now, I think if a farmer changes his mind, if he decides that, this location isn't really the optimal place to locate this action, then the best thing to do is just not deliver it and not make a claim for payment on it, and apply in a new location in the next window. There'll be no penalty. Nobody will be penalised for that.
And I'd say in terms of the applications, if a farmer applied for 6 or 7 NPIs, delivers on 3 of them, delivers them properly, they can make one claim on those 3. They don't have to deliver all 7.
Yeah, if a farmer applies, as you say, for 7 NPIs and he delivers 3 and he makes a claim on those 3, he'll be paid for the ones that he delivers, and the others will fall by the wayside. And there'll be no penalty or any issue about that.
Okay, we're just coming up on time here now, so I think we'll probably leave it at that. Lots of questions still coming in, but I think we've got through most of them. Thanks, Mícheál, and Fergal for stepping through them very quickly. Fergal, thanks again for joining us this morning. Apologies to people who weren't able to see some of the demo. It would have been nice to see the actual website in action, but look, the link is there within the chat. Highly recommend people to go and take a look at that. acresireland.ie/actions-explorer is the way to get the access to that. And look, I googled it; it comes straight up in Google, so an easy way for people to access it. Mícheál, thanks very much for helping out with questions. And look, until next week, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Huge viewership this morning. So obviously this is a very topical area. So I'm sure we'll be touching on it again in future webinars. But until next week, thanks again, and we will hopefully have our main team back again. And but until then, enjoy the weekend.